Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and that's on the For Liberty network. 5 live shows on the Wake Up America show. Glad and thankful to have you here. I'm your host, AP for Liberty. And if you found me after the conversation that I had with Viva yesterday, welcome to the show. I hope you like what you heard. If so, you're going to get more of that here today. The show is kid-friendly, yes, and I will especially today watch my language. Does that sound good? I work hard to make it a kid-friendly show. Sometimes I do swear a little, but I try not to, and because I'm a family guy myself, I know what it's like. Well, the Libertarian Party, I don't know if maybe the clips I'm going to play, some of them, well, no. He takes his clothes off, but not fully and completely, okay? Just hide their eyes for that one part. It's coming up, though. The Libertarian Party is debating whether a man can show up to their national convention this week in a tutu. That's a real headline from this week, the New York Sun. Suit or tutu? The Libertarian Party is fighting over a dress code. Now, the convention theme is called Freedom Calls. Freedom Called. Well, Freedom Called, and they want to talk about pants. You should wear them. Now, I was in Orlando back in 2016 when a man stripped down to his thong on a convention floor on C-SPAN, on live television, while delegates were stuffing dollar bills into his underwear. I had a front row seat for that. I had just lost the presidential primary that I spent everything on. I gave the man who beat me that day a replica of George Washington's flintlock pistol, the one that you see right there behind you, which I've had for a long, long time now. And Gary Johnson, I gave it to him as a gesture of unity, many of you know, and then he threw it in the garbage can hours later. Oops. Oops. My supporters approached me in my suite afterwards. The mood was dark, and then it just got worse. I won't say it's one of the worst nights of my life because I truly met some wonderful, loving people who all hate my guts right now. Especially because I'm wearing this hat. What have I done? I spoke the truth in hard words today, though it may contradict everything that I believe before me. Oh, you are to be misunderstood, AP for Liberty. Well, is it so bad to be misunderstood? Hope Camelia's out there and heard that one. The Libertarian Party looked at all of that, at the thong, the pistol, the trash, all of these scandals all over the years. And their idea was they spent the next 10 years producing chair scandals and fractional vote percentages. And they arrived this year to the Grand Rapids, Michigan convention. And the big fight is over a dress code. Okay, this is a patient who has been sick for 53 years, who just discovered the hospital has a clothing policy. Yes, if you want to be a part of society, if you want to be in politics, you're going to have to wear clothes. And while all of this was happening, Thomas Massie lost his congressional seat this week. The Liberty Movement, someone who I supported for years, is our most prominent elected face, gone. And the first person to eulogize him was a Democrat from California who immediately started recruiting his voters into the Democratic Party. You know how I felt for the last year, 2, 3 years, as we've been building the For Liberty Network? I feel a little bit like Noah, who has been building the ark, while the rest of y'all fools, not y'all, not the people who listen to the show because you're obviously intelligent, but the people who were driving the Titanic full speed ahead towards the iceberg and were screaming at me and us, we who built this lifeboat, by the way. You're welcome. We were furiously building the ark while everybody was saying, we've got this. Thomas Massie's going to destroy them all. I'm like, your overconfidence is your weakness. Your faith in your friends is yours. I guess it was, because there went all my friends. Because I was like, you guys are gonna destroy it all. This isn't gonna work. Well, they didn't listen to me in 2016, and I don't doubt many of them are listening to me right now. But Misha Swisky's here, and that's all I need. Austin, nobody's listening to your podcast. Well, then it doesn't matter. Then, why is it so important for you to try and destroy my ego? Because I obviously don't have any space to have one. I've done nothing in my life. I contribute nothing of value, is what I'm told on a daily basis. Nevertheless, she persisted. But this is where the movement is right now. The geniuses, the people who already know everything, guys, the ones who are smarter than us, the ones who just ran the Thomas Massie campaign to the ground, the people they're still arguing over dress codes, right? 10 years after the 2016 election where a guy stripped naked on stage, the main focus point is, can we get libertarians to wear clothes? How can you govern a society if you cannot govern yourself? But remember, I'm the idiot. I'm the fool. I'm the loser, the freak, right? They're the geniuses, right? Javier Milei took office with poverty at 41%. Can we get a little applause here for Javier Milei? Oh, good. I know people hate some people hate the soundboard, but get over it. Javier Milei took office with poverty at 41%, and he cut it to 26% in under 2 years. And how did he do that? Well, he showed up with a chainsaw and the full conviction of a man who decided what he was willing to fight for. The American Liberty Movement has the same ideas, and they have a dress code problem, okay? Something has to change. And this episode is about what that something is. Change, change, change. We're all going to change, guys. We have to change. King of Bill Tong over in the chat. What's up, Bill Tong? Oh, that's a Viva guy. Good morning. Can't wait to try the... it's like a roast beef, but it's like dried jerky. I'm looking forward to that. Eric, well, let's see. Who do we have here? Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Yeah. Somebody in the chat. Eric Wilson says, stop calling James Weeks a libertarian. That's the guy who got naked. He's a commie. He was there to do that. Okay, but I mean, why... Isn't it legitimate for me to ask the question why so many commies were really attracted to Thomas Massie's campaign last year? Isn't that a legitimate question? Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like Tom Woods is gaslighting us all. And Dave Smith and Clint Russell and all these guys, they've been gaslighting us for the last 3 years. They're sniffing their own farts. Guess what? I've got a couple of guys on my show today that don't sniff their own farts. The people you're going to hear from this show are quality gentlemen. One you've never heard from before. One that I have to have back on because, frankly, he's one of the smartest guys in the world. But you know what I like about him? He doesn't act like it. It's not like Thomas Massie, where I'm the smartest guy in the world. We're the smartest people in the world. We're going to win this. It's going to be okay. All right. Well, good. Your MIT degree you got a degree from MIT. Okay, congratulations on the MIT degree. And you got Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur and Ro Khanna, and I don't know, a bunch of other commie fucks. Oh, excuse me. Sorry for the language. I know we got kids there. I'm so sorry. It slipped out. Please forgive me. I will not do that again. Child, I have sinned. Forgive me, Lord. We've got Blake Cresses on the show today. I don't want you to miss him. He's awesome. So I'll keep the swear words to a minimum so you can hear from Daniel McCarthy at 8:30. Blake Cresses absolutely hates libertarians. He hates every single one of us. I don't know if he hates me, but does that make me not a real libertarian? I don't know. If you're a real libertarian, Blake Cresses, he hates your guts. And he's going to come on today to tell all of us why he hates us so much. And you know what? I think it's good every once in a while to do this. It's like cleansing. It's like, okay, nobody likes to look at their faults, but you never improve if you can't look at your blind spots. And I've just been examining all of my blind spots the last 2 or 3 years. And I think it's not insulting, but when other people see you kind of examining yourself and sort of taking stock and like taking ownership of your faults, it's not an insult, but it's kind of an attack on them because everybody's so terrified of looking at themselves in the mirror. I mean, some people, they love looking at themselves in the mirror, and that's another problem entirely. But I mean, at some point you have to take a look at measurement. Okay, my left boob's a little bigger than my right boob. Okay, so I need to like pump I've got some hanging chin here. My hair's going gray. What are you supposed to do with it? But it's so important. If you don't do it, then you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have You're gonna make so many errors. And you know who I'm looking at right now? Jennifer Halbein. Jennifer, I'm so glad you stayed. I'm so glad you stayed. I know you got so mad at me. But I hope now that this is the opportunity we have to press the reset button. But you've been supporting us, Jennifer, the For Liberty Network. I mean, it was good. You helped. Thanks for helping build the lifeboat, because I have built the lifeboat for American libertarians to get us off of the reef, away from the iceberg. I've built the ark. It's time to get the animals on. And 2 by 2, this is a great metaphor. Yesterday, I compared the libertarian movement to the cause of the Confederacy. It's kind of like the lost cause, if you will, in so many ways. But let's not make it that way. Let's make it, let's fight for the Union. Let's fight for America. It's the 250th anniversary. Can't we just make America great again, please? I want to be on a team that wants to make America great again. But the people, the libertarians, just won't let us have nice things. The New York Sun ran a headline this week: suit or tutu, the Libertarian Party fights over dress code. Well, the Libertarian National Committee is formally debating a proposed addition to its policy manual requiring delegates to wear collared shirts at the 2026 National Convention in Grand Rapids. Okay, so the proposed language is attire commonly understood to be intentionally disruptive, overtly theatrical, or fetish-oriented, right? During official seasons, the convention theme is Freedom Calls. Well, Freedom Called, they want to talk about pants, okay? They want you to wear pants. In 53 years, the Libertarian Party has not elected a single member to the United States Congress. They had one, he flipped to the party and then quit and ran away, and then quit the party back, and then came back as a Republican and tried to run. It was a mess, right? The drug war is still going. Federal government spent $6.7 trillion in the last fiscal year. Their 2024 presidential candidate received 0.38% of the vote. Their chair resigned amid accusations she was failing to disclose gifts to her domestic partner from party funds. The agenda item they've chosen to address heading into the next cycle is confirming in writing that a collared shirt is required. The Libertarian Party is supposed to be the political home of the ideas that the American Republic was built on: sound money, constitutional government, individual sovereignty, the liberty that men died for at Lexington and Concord and Valley Forge. Those ideas are correct. They've always been correct. And for 53 years, the LP has been carrying them around the way a patient carries a tumor, present, inert, and it's slowly killing the host. Because the problem has never been the philosophy. The problem is actually the organization that holds it. Now, I know this organization because I served at every level as a member of the Libertarian Party. Initially, I was hired to work as a volunteer coordinator. I was the highest performing volunteer coordinator they had ever had. I brought in so many new students and programs at such a reduced cost that it almost cost nothing to run my operation. And so I moved up so fast that they knew that they had to promote me. So they just gave me, I was happy with just having a new title and I think $1,000 a year raise. I went from 40,000 to 41,000. I didn't care. It wasn't about the money. I just wanted to contribute. I wanted to fight for liberty and Ron Paul and for the Constitution. And well, shit, I still believe in liberty. Since those days, I stood outside a grocery store in Virginia trying to get my friend Bill on the ballot. And I will never forget, years later in 2016, when I ran for president, Bill coming up and screaming in my face at the convention, saying that I had mischaracterized what I had done for him to try and get him on the ballot. But he came up and apologized later because I had stood outside in the rain collecting signatures to get him on the ballot. He was mad because I had dared to challenge Gary Johnson. I had dared to try and foment a revolution within the revolution, if you can believe it. They hated me for it. They hated that I wanted to do better, be better. I was working so hard to try and make the Libertarian Party, and it was embarrassing them. My victories within the Libertarian Party embarrassed them because they had done nothing, or they had just shown up at the last minute after 10 years of activism on my part. And this dress code debate, I think, if you understand where the Libertarian Party is, which is in a kind of a perpetually childlike state, then you'll understand a little bit more about why Thomas Massie lost the other night. We're going to have to go back, though, to May 29th of 2016, the Rosen Center, Orlando, Florida. C-SPAN is streaming the Libertarian National Convention live. This was a big deal because normally people don't care what we're doing. It was the biggest crowd of people that the Libertarian Party had ever seen, the most attention ever. And I am running for president of the United States alongside Gary Johnson, John McAfee, and a host of others. Delegates are on the floor tabulating votes for the vice presidential nomination. A candidate for LNC chairman named James Weeks walks to the podium and tells the room on national television, well, I thought we could use a little bit of fun. This is the time to close your eyes, by the way. He thought we could use a little fun. So he takes out his phone, he plays some music, and he proceeds to strip down to a thong and dance on stage while other delegates run up and stuff dollar bills into his underwear. He's booed off of the stage. I don't know if you can see me here in some of these crowd shots here. You might actually see me sort of like celebrating and stuff, but it's not because I think it's a good thing that he's doing. But my clapping and applause for what's about to go on right now is what I'm saying is that this is actually a perfect example of what you are, libertarians. This is who you are, or which even if it's not who you are per se, this is how you are perceived. And so if you see me, if they do a crowd shot here in a moment, yeah, he's saying no, and I'm saying yes, yes. I appear to be encouraging it, but I'm not encouraging it in a way. I'm expressing my agreement that this is a perfect example of who you are. Now, this wasn't the only embarrassing thing at the Libertarian Party's convention that happened that year. So, he danced on stage and, on his way out, he says, I'm sorry, that was a dare. I think CNN said the next morning the LP needed to go get past the wacky stuff, right? Well, that was what they are, right? He was later expelled, I think, from the Michigan Libertarian Party. That was how the LP, though, was introduced to millions of Americans who had never heard of the Libertarian Party before. Millions of people tuning in to see what they were all about because of the unhappiness with the candidates of the two major parties. Now, that same night, after Gary Johnson secured the presidential nomination on the second ballot, I walked to the front of that convention floor on President's Day. I had just lost the race that I had spent everything on. I had a replica of George Washington's flintlock pistol, one of a matched pair, right? It's a symbol of American history that had sat on my shelf for years. I got it at George Washington's home, Mount Vernon. And it was a prized possession for me. I mean, people made fun of it later, said, oh, well, it's just a replica. Well, yeah, it's $100 replica, but it's not a real gun, but it's not about it being a real gun. I couldn't bring a real gun. There's John McAfee in the back. Oh, I miss you, John. Let's give it up for John. Gary Johnson threw that pistol, sitting right back there, in the garbage the garbage can. A husband and a wife fished it out of the trash and brought it back to me. Then later, Johnson's campaign, in a slimy move, sent somebody to offer $500 to me to buy it back. Then I said no. Then they said, we'll give you $1,500 to buy it back. And I said no. And they said $15,000 for that pistol right now. And I said no. And they said, name your price. And I said, it's not for sale. I'm keeping it. I still have it right there. That gun right now, because the last offer on that gun was $15,000. That gun is actually, that fake gun is now the most expensive and valuable gun I have real guns that are, and they're not worth anywhere near as much money as that. If I auction it off, just know I'm running for president again, and that's your sign. April 9th, 1865, Robert E. Lee signed the surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. He shook Ulysses Grant's hand, bowed to the assembled Union officers, and walked out to his horse. Grant followed him into the yard and silently removed his hat. Every officer standing with him did the same. Lee raised his own hat and rode off without a word. When Union troops started firing cannon in celebration, Grant shut it down on the spot. The Confederates were now our countrymen, he said, and we did not want to exult over their downfall. Grant had just won the Civil War. He took his hat off. Gary Johnson won a party primary and threw the George Washington pistol in a garbage can. The LP has been making that choice ever since. I like to ask at speaking events now when I go to libertarian events, have you ever been punched in the face? Not because they deserve it, although... But very few hands go up, right? Most of the people who are there, brilliant people, and not one of them has had to hold their ground when something was coming at them that they couldn't out-argue, right? The Gadsden flag is an active threat. Don't tread on me. That is a standing promise of violence to anyone who crosses that line. The LP has just turned it into a merch line, but they forgot what they were actually saying. In August of 2014, the New York Times Magazine ran a cover story asking, has the libertarian moment finally arrived? The piece opened in the offices of Reason Magazine in Washington, D.C., and made the case that the liberty movement was finally, after decades of irrelevance, being taken seriously by serious people. Polling showed that Americans trended away from both parties at that time. Trust in government was at historic lows. The wars were unpopular. The surveillance state, Edward Snowden had just exposed what he was doing was producing genuine outrage. 2 years later, the LP had two former governors on the ticket, the most credible libertarian presidential run in history, at least on paper. He was polling at 9% in a four-way race against the two most unpopular major party nominees in modern American history. Then, September 8th of 2016, MSNBC's Morning Joe, a panelist named Mike Barnacle, of all things, asked Gary Johnson what he would do about Aleppo. And Johnson said, "What is Aleppo?" The man running for president on a non-interventionist foreign policy platform didn't know the name of the city at the center of the largest refugee crisis on earth. He later said that he thought Aleppo might be an acronym. In a separate interview in the same month, however, if you thought that was just, simple foible, anybody could have had that happen to them. He then stuck his tongue out deliberately through his teeth at a reporter, explaining why he should be in the presidential debates. It was the naked dancing guy on stage equivalent, right? Then Johnson finished with 3.28%, and the LP called it historic because it was, and now it's ancient history. It was the party's best result since the founding, and then they spent the next 8 years failing to build on it. Factions, chair scandals, lost ballot access, and they arrived at 2024 with a nominee who cleared less than 0.5%. The LP had one window. Let's face it. It opened in 2016 with the most target-rich third-party environment in a generation, 3 generations. And they fumbled it on a Morning Joe, and they never got it back. And now they're fighting about pants. They've diverted. They've gone back in time. They're still in 2016 debating about whether or not they should be wearing clothes. Now, before we get to the next stage, my man Vivek Ramaswamy, before we get there, I need to talk to you about something. I love America, and I know many of you do, and many of you don't want to give it up to commies and losertarians, and not that you have to worry about them, or even right-wing authoritarians. We want to live in a free country. I love America, and I love liberty, and I will always defend my country. I guess that makes me a nationalist. My 250th anniversary collection is our little personal family celebration that we like to share with you because we buy this stuff, we wear this stuff. I love the 250th anniversary merch collection because my wife designed like 9 out of 10 of these things, and she just puts so much love and effort into it. She's my own little Betsy Ross, isn't she? So I would like to implore you to visit forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. If you have never visited the shop, check it out. Head over to forlibertyshop.com. That is the number 4, libertyshop.com. Some people are like FOR. Well, yes, forlibertyshop.com, FOR will still work. But if the bifold wallet was a sleeper hit, Stephanie designed this and I was kind of like, I wonder if people will like that. And boy, oh boy, do they like that. The 1776 Betsy Ross Stars leather wallet, the bifold wallet, will never go out of style. So head on over to forlibertyshop.com. Remember, when you see the prices, that includes shipping, and you can always save a whole bunch of money because if you buy 2, you can get 15. You don't have to buy 2 of the same wallet. You could just get a wallet and a t-shirt and use that code, buy 2, get 15. Don't sleep on the Grift Shop because especially when you make purchases during the live show, it helps to unlock our bonus content. And we're also producing 250th anniversary Revolutionary War hero American documentaries. So if that's what you're into, head over to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. Sound good? Okay, I'm just going to take a brief little break, guys. Got a couple of things I got to set up and fix. We'll be right back. Don't go away. When we come up, we're going to talk about hope for the future. A Hindu libertarian nationalist who just won the GOP nomination for governor of Ohio. We'll be right back. It's the White Pill on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from 4 Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again. George Washington's secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com. In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive. And if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Hi. My name is Grace. I just want to thank you for coming here tonight and talking to all of us.
It's cool to be here.
I wanted to ask you a question because I'm a libertarian voter.
Okay.
I'm somebody who subscribes to the Austrian School of Economics, and you have, on many occasions, said that Friedrich Hayek, who is one of the most prolific contributors and thinkers to that school of thought, has influenced your political ideology, especially when you met with the president of Argentina, Javier Milei.
Yeah, you're really doing your homework. I like that.
Well, yeah.
You a Mises person or Hayek girl?
I'm a Mises person.
Okay, fair enough. I like Mises
I love
too.
Hayek. I talk about the knowledge problem all the time for my work. But yeah, you said that you're a Hayek guy, he's a Mises guy. So my question to you is, I mean, I'm a libertarian voter. I vote libertarian, but you know, you're a Republican. Sorry, let me do it more precise. So my question for you is, what principles of Hayek that are rooted in ultimate individual liberty do you promise to uphold if you were elected to the governor?
Sure. And this goes to specifically, let's talk Hayek specifically.
Yes,
'cause
Hayek
one of the things that really distinguished him even from a lot of the other libertarian economists was his motivation based on the fundamental equal dignity that every human being is owed, the moral worth of a human being. And he was against redistributionist schemes, not just because it maximized the size of the economic pie, okay? He was against it because you should never equate someone's moral value with the number of green pieces of paper in their bank account. And so to me, the part of Hayek that influences me most and will influence the way that I hopefully lead this state, if I'm given the opportunity to do that, is to respect that fundamental moral equality of every individual, whether they agree with me or not, whether they vote for me or not, whether they have a lot of money or a little money or no money, whether they're in a
That's
single
my guy right there. Yeah. Vivek Ramaswamy took the main stage at the Libertarian National Convention in May 24th of 2024, this was the presidential election year, and said to the delegates, I believe the future of this country depends on a libertarian nationalist alliance. And you know what they did? Many of them booed him. Yeah, just like they're booing me right now. And lead a horse to water. A man walked onto their stage, offered them a bridge to the fastest growing political coalition in the country, and the floor responded with boos. Reason magazine, the idiot Eric Beam, published a piece days later titled, No, Vivek Ramaswamy, a libertarian nationalist alliance doesn't make sense. Oh, you idiots. Well, guess who's the Republican nominee for the GOP in Ohio for governor now? Vivek. 53 years into the Libertarian Party, and the federal government had its biggest spending year in American history. And what have the Libertarians accomplished? On Tuesday, Thomas Massie lost his Kentucky primary to Ed Galrine, a Trump-backed former Navy SEAL. It's the most expensive House primary in American history. And I promise you that it's not AIPAC that's to blame. I promise you that the Jews are not the reason you're a loser. It's not everybody else's fault, libertarians. It's ours. Massie's been in Congress since 2012. He was the Liberty Movement's most recognizable face in elected office. He voted no on everything. He pushed for the Epstein files. He opposed the war. He stood on principle when everyone else was caving. And he lost by 9 points. The first eulogy posted after the race was called from Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, who wrote, my good friend Thomas Massie lost tonight. He lost because he had the guts to stand up to the Epstein class and against the war. Sure. Yeah. Murtech, thank you very much for rating this morning. Thank you, Steelbringer and King of Biltong this morning for gifting subs. We're so grateful for that. Thank you, guys. Keep those Rumble rants coming. Gift those subs. And head over to forlibertyshop.com this morning. Looks like we're number 1 on X today. That's great. So kind of that, and if you came in, oh, wait. I'll give you a sneak preview of the bonus content. Whoops, Austin hit the wrong button. But as you heard me talking about this with Viva Fry yesterday on his podcast, if you guys came over from here, then you probably heard me talking about this reason that Thomas Massie lost. They're right now they're trying to rationalize or justify it. I feel like Viva, though, he doesn't want to follow the kind of like conspiratard way of thinking because it's shown to be a loser now. The problem, of course, is that when the incentives for politicians and Rumble streamers, it turns out, are different. It turns out that even if real Pakistani people in Pakistan are watching your live stream, that you will get. It will be good for your numbers. It will be good for maybe your ad views. Maybe you'll make a little bit more money if you have a lot more people from Pakistan, but it turns out that they can't vote. So their opinions don't matter in Kentucky. Not everybody's opinions matter. And Aviva and we had a great conversation, and I hope that he sees the light, and I think that he will. So King of Biltong is joining us there from that yesterday. He says Viva is very centrist in his thinking. Yeah, I just had the feeling like Viva was kind of going down the conspiracy crazy route there a little bit towards the end. And I was like trying to reel him back in, right? The Liberty Movement, they've spent their years, the Ron Paul years, organized around foreign policy grievances. They're obsessed. They can't focus on anything else. Literally everything is the Jews writ large, because they cannot talk about anything else. You will be having a perfectly normal conversation about what Friedrich Hayek thought about the intrinsic morality of every individual, and somebody wants to talk about how the USS Liberty was clearly flying the American flag, and that these jets that were going by clearly should have seen and known that it was an American flagship. And it's like, well, how did we even get here? Right? The best congressional asset that we had is gone. but he's now being recruited into the Democratic Party by a congressman from San Jose. Right? Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death," in March of 1775. 6 weeks later, the battles of Lexington and Concord happened. The sentence had a body count before the year was out. Every man who had picked up a musket that spring had already decided he was willing to die before the British showed up and made the decision for him. The LP has spent 5 decades treating that inheritance like it's just some interior decoration. What they've produced is an organization that cannot fight, will not win, and has spent the last 2 years converting every available liberty space into a referendum on a foreign territorial conflict while the income tax runs up and the border stays open and Americans' children sit in classrooms being taught that the founding was a crime scene. I don't give a shit about Palestinians. I don't care. I don't care. Israel can have every single one of them. The liberty movement in America is sick. We are having a problem here. The ideas that we carry, these are good ideas. The men carrying these are not good men. That's the diagnosis. The cure exists. I've got a specific cure for you. Dr. Sensei AP for Liberty is going to give you the medicine. I have the cure, and that's what this segment is about. Javier Milei walked onto a debate stage in Buenos Aires carrying a chainsaw. He wasn't making a metaphor. He called the central bank a criminal institution to its face on live television. He said, "Viva la libertad, carajo," at Davos in front of the entire global financial establishment and watched them shift in their seats. Even lolberts had to sit up and take notice. He ran on dollarizing the currency, eliminating 11 ministries, and cutting the state in half. And he said it louder than anyone in the country had ever said anything. But when Javier Milei took office in December of 2023, he faced a challenge. Poverty in Argentina was at 41.7%. By the third quarter of 2025, it was 26.9%. Extreme poverty went from 18.1% to 6%. He lifted roughly 8 million people out of poverty in under 2 years by being a real libertarian and actually governing. Milei didn't win by achieving philosophical purity. He hasn't even been able to fulfill all of his campaign promises. He didn't run on a clean, non-interventionist foreign policy like he was on a podcast for 12 years, right? He won because he made the case for liberty with his body and his soul and his volume. He won because he made the case for liberty to people, and he wasn't embarrassed by his own convictions, right? This concept that Javier Milei advanced, liberty advances, was not. He produced a non-toxic, a healthy liberty movement. We have a cancer-stricken, unhealthy liberty movement in this country. Now, I've given you the diagnosis. Dr. Sensei AP is giving you the diagnosis. Here's what's wrong with you. Here's why you're sick. You know, the LP has not elected a single member of Congress. They've been converting every space, liberty space that exists into a referendum on a territorial conflict 6,000 miles from the American border that I do not give a shit about, and most Americans don't either. Their best congressional asset lost his seat on Tuesday, and a Democrat from California was first in line to recruit his voters. So this segment is the cure. The cure is not going to be a policy paper. It's not a better podcast. What I'm proposing is a complete reorientation of what kind of man the American liberty movement is trying to produce and a specific program for producing him. Now, the Groypers and the foreign policy obsessives, they share one thing that has nothing to do with Israel. Both factions have found a permanent theoretical problem that justifies never having to win anything. You didn't win? The Jews. I'm a loser? The Jews. I don't have any muscles. I've never had sex. That's the Jews' fault. The Groypers need the cultural war to stay that's abroad to stay hot so that they never have to run for school board. The foreign policy obsessives need the geopolitical ledger settled before they will do precinct work. We have to stop the war in Iran before I'll get up off my ass and knock on my neighbor's door to try and get out the vote. Permanent problems are comfortable because they require analysis instead of action. I'm monitoring the situation. But the truth is that the American Republic is going to be saved by men who have found a fight. Ronald Reagan chopped wood at 73 years old on a ranch in California while running the free world. He didn't perform vigor as an aesthetic choice. It was how he moved through the world. And it communicated something to every foreign leader who sat across a table from him that no policy position could ever communicate on its own. You see, back in the 1980s, understood that a nation rebuilding its confidence after a decade of melees needed to see its leadership embody that recovery in the body first. Every training montage from that era is a document of what it looks like when a culture decides it's done being weak. Ryan Gosling played a character in 2023 who had spent his entire existence as an accessory. No identity, no purpose, no sense of what he was for. And then in the Barbie movie, he discovers masculinity and he immediately wanted all of it. Yes, that is what we need. The liberty movement is full of plastic Kens, men with no balls, men who have no parts down there. Sorry, kids, if you're listening. Again, I'm trying. Please forgive me. That's what the men are. They are men with that, who lack what makes a man a man. All right, Milei, he was physical. He was spiritual. He had read everything, Mises, Hayek, Rothbard, and then he took that intellectual preparation. He built a physical and emotional presence around it that could fill arenas. He went directly to the people that the institution had abandoned, working class Argentines, these people who'd watched their savings evaporate under decades of Peronist monetary policy. And he spoke to them with the full force of a man who believed every word he is saying. The American Milei is somewhere in this country right now with the correct ideas, and no one's in his orbit telling him what winning requires. He's not going to emerge from the Libertarian convention that's debating the TUTU policy. He's going to come out of the dojo. I've been training in martial arts for years, and now I'm a teacher. We had class last night, wonderful group of children. The class size is just overflowing now. We started off with just 5 or 6 kids, and now, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 kids. We're busting out of the place here in Jeff City. But I'll tell you this, an hour a week of serious Japanese karate will change your relationship to physical confrontation a lot faster than any book that you've read. And everything that changes in the dojo transfers to your real life. That's what I'm saying. The way you hold yourself in a room, I will never forget one of the Libertarian Party debates. Someone came up and asked if I was in the military afterwards. I said, no, I was not. And then after this conversation, they said, well, the reason I thought so is because you were the only one who sat up straight. And I was kind of like, what do you mean? All of the presidential candidate libertarians were all sitting for a presidential debate. The way you hold yourself in a room where someone is trying to intimidate you, right? That is the conflict right there. If you can't even stand up straight, if you can't even show people you have a spine, how are they going to believe that you actually have a spiritual spine? You have to stop treating conflict like it's something you're going to be resolved by finding the correct philosophical argument, right? Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence and rode horses and managed an estate of 5,000 acres. Hamilton fought at Yorktown. Madison studied every Republican history and then built one. The combination of intellectual preparation and physical capability is not a novel idea. It is what serious men have always understood to be the minimum. When somebody puts a gun to your head, the tactically correct response is not a 45-minute podcast about the geopolitical origins of firearms manufacturing, unless, of course, you're using it as a distraction until you figure out a way to disarm them. The Israel question is the gun, a permanent demands of conscience mechanism that keeps philosophically serious men busy achieving perfect analytical clarity on an unanswerable foreign question while the actual work of American politics goes undone in every state legislature in this country. You do not debate the history of the gun while it is pointed at you. You learn guerrilla tactics. You take the ground in front of you, and then you move forward. Milei went around the Argentine establishment entirely. Direct contact with people who had been abandoned by every institution that was supposed to serve them, a physical presence that communicated total conviction at every moment. He was underfunded. He was dismissed as dangerous by every serious person. They called him a neighborhood phenomenon, which became their campaign cry. His campaign operated like a guerrilla force, like the Viet Cong. They knew they couldn't win a conventional engagement, and they chose not to have a conventional engagement. And that's your playbook. School boards, county commissions, state legislative races, precinct captaincies. The federal government doesn't get dismantled from Washington first. It gets dismantled from Chesterfield County and Johnson County and every other jurisdiction where a prepared man with the right ideas shows up and does the work. Thomas Massie spent 14 years in Congress voting no on everything and lost his seat. Ron Paul spent 30 years in Congress voting no on everything and passed one bill, one. His colleagues called him Dr. No. They meant it as a compliment, and he took it as one. The Federal Reserve's still running. The drug war's still running. The model of the heroic, principled dissenter who refuses to soil himself with coalition politics is heading over here to Rumble to compete with us. So, great. Just what I need. Murray Rothbard wrote in 1967 that libertarians who refuse to assign greater guilt to one party in a conflict guarantee their own irrelevance. Ron Paul wing claims Rothbard as their intellectual foundation, and they've been proving his diagnosis correct for 50 years. My position in the Middle East is simple. No American money. Let's not fight a war that we don't have to. After the parties in the region solve their territorial disputes, hopefully we don't have to be a referee forever. You don't have to have a fully developed theory of why Gaza should be a legal entity, because I don't care, ultimately. I don't give a shit. What's necessary to protect American liberty, American security, and America's border? That's what I care about. The Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto lays out what this movement is for and what kind of man the defense of it requires. The Groypers have the nation without the liberty. The foreign policy obsessives have the liberty without the nation. Both of them are holding half a flag. Read my manifesto and come to the dojo on Wednesday nights in Jefferson City, Missouri. I've got to take a quick little commercial break. When we come back, Blake Cressis is going to be joining us. I had a little bit more to say about Milei and why you guys got to stop smoking weed and start doing testosterone. But here's a man who's going to join us who hates every single one of us. What about me? Blake Cressis, producer for John Doyle at The Blaze, coming up next. Thanks for sticking around. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. We're glad and thankful to have you here. If you haven't already, click the like button, guys. It's easy to forget, so don't forget. Click that like button and then the follow button as well over here on Rumble at AP for Liberty. We got a ton of friends hanging out in the chat. It's nice to see you guys this morning. King of Biltong is here with us. My lovely, smoking hot, redheaded libertarian wife Stephanie is here with us. Camellia is here. Yes, she's also sick of hearing about Israel. Me too. I just want to remind everybody, I don't care about Palestinians, and that's why libertarians hate me. My next guest hates all libertarians. Well, we'll see. Thomas Massie is gone, and everyone in the MAGA world, they're not even pretending to be sad about it. They're dunking on us. They are taking our faces, and they're rubbing it in the mud and calling us nerds. And one of the most consistent critics of Massie's record has been saying for a long time that the Libertarian Party's or the Liberty Movement's open borders problem is going to catch up with us. Turns out he was right. Blake Cresses is here to tell us why he hates our guts. Blake, good morning, sir. Welcome to the Wake Up America show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's good to see you, Austin. For the record, I don't hate anybody. I love everyone, but I am going to take my victory lap. You know, after the treatment from Thomas Massie supporters over the past, year. And obviously not all of you guys. And I'm addicted to Twitter, young man. So I'm in the trenches and I see probably the worst that the quote unquote movement has to offer. But yeah, I mean, with the confidence you guys had and I don't say you because Austin, I know that you're a patriot, but the more the less aligned with reality individuals within the quote unquote liberty movement, these people have they had this immense overconfidence in Thomas Massie. They truly believed that the people of Kentucky's 4th District were these terminally online, free Palestine, Jew-obsessed schizophrenics instead of just normal, down-to-earth Republican Trump-supporting voters. And I predicted it almost to the T that it was going to be Gowrine plus 10. And yeah, I mean, for months, people were asking me to bet with them and telling me that they were going to clown on me. So I'm happy.
You get to take the dub, and Austin Peterson and the Libertarians get to take another L. Congratulations. I'm used to taking L's. So let's talk about this. I mean, you've been one of Massie's most vocal critics.
Yes.
And, you know, your core argument was about his borders record. So lay that case out, because a lot of libertarians were saying, well, the one big beautiful bill, it was about spending. But I actually thought that too at the time, Blake. But then it turns out that Massie, just like he kind of like made his little slip up when he left, and he mentioned he was talking about Israel in his like concession speech. He slipped up and said that the one big beautiful bill was about immigration, and that is the thing that seems to have caught people's ire, because it turns out that Massie's not really a big friend of you border hawks on the border security issue.
Yeah, and he hasn't been, at least not since 2019 when he voted against Trump's emergency authorization for the border wall. When it comes to the one big beautiful bill, that was really, it was a compilation of pretty much most things that Trump campaigned on. I'm not going to say everything that Trump campaigned on, but most things, particularly the border, immigration, by far the top, immigration and the economy, by far the top two issues for the American people in the 2024 election. I would argue immigration was higher on everybody's priority list. We were seeing what was happening to people like Lake and Riley. We were getting clips from the border. And yeah, I mean, this bill gave us an unprecedented increase in ICE funding for the border wall, all these great things that Thomas Massie voted against. And that was really a gut punch. That was when Trump decided to go after him. It wasn't because of the Epstein files. People lie about that. It wasn't because of anything else. It was the one big beautiful bill that really ticked Trump off. This was months, because if you remember the big beautiful bill, it took months for this thing to get passed, and Thomas Massie opposed it every single step of the way. Massie didn't start talking about Epstein until after he voted no on the one big beautiful bill and essentially nuked his career. He mentioned Massie maybe 4 times, I think, from in between 2019 and 2025. Only after he nuked his career did he make Epstein the big thing that was going to save him, and he used it pretty much exclusively to attack Trump. But yeah, I mean, this is the central problem with the libertarian ideology in my mind, is the support for open borders. And Thomas Massie was really the best example of this. And if you need more proof, he actually released a tweet with a list of all the problems he saw with the one big beautiful bill and how he wanted it broken up into these smaller bills, these single issue bills, which we can talk about why that's never going to work. Never has worked the entire 14 years that Massie's been in office. But one of the things he listed with his problems with the big beautiful bill, he said unrealistic border funding. He wanted a single issue bill with quote unquote realistic border funding. So that meant that whatever excuse he has for the big beautiful bill, whether it's pork, whether it's this, he explicitly said that one of his problems was the massive increase in border funding and border security funding and ICE funding and all this stuff. And then it goes beyond that. He voted a couple months ago for an amendment, or no, it was a whole bill, I think, to mandate ICE get warrants for deportations. This would have affected, he voted alongside Democrats for this. It would have effectively neutered ICE, just destroyed their operations altogether, bureaucratizing the system, ensuring that we don't get really any deportations, let alone mass deportations. So, yeah, man, I mean, when you're going to buck the president on his key issue, you're going to lose. You're going to buck the American people on their key issue. You're going to align yourself with Democrats. You're going to lose. So,
okay, well, good. Interesting point of view there. I want to say thank you to our friends over in the chat, King of Biltong. I created a discount code for everybody who wants to try it. I'm definitely going to use that. BiltongUSA.com. You can save 10% using the code Liberty. Nice to meet you guys. I went on Viva's show yesterday and had an argument with him, Blake. Because there were a lot of people who they were drinking their own Kool-Aid, man. So I haven't seen people drinking Kool-Aid like that since Jamestown. I mean, libertarians suffer from a lot of the same socialist delusions of grandeur, and then they get just absolutely destroyed, and then they wonder what happened, and then they blame everybody else for their own problems. And that's been the topic of this show in the first hour. I went back to like 2016 and Gary Johnson and heroin to 5-year-olds and naked fat dancing guys, and like the Libertarian Party is meeting this week, Blake, and their big argument is about whether or not people should be wearing tutus or, you know, cross-dressing or acting like freaks. So not much has changed in the last 10 years. Things haven't gotten better in libertarian world. They've gotten so much worse, more god-awful than you can ever imagine. It's you will live to see horrors beyond your imagination if you know, and I'm sure that that's probably what has impacted your attitude towards libertarians is seeing like the freak show perhaps in your feed. But note that there are many good, sincere American patriots who still think that liberty should be the individual, like should be a part of the American project. But the liberty crowd is going to argue that the MAGA position on immigration requires exactly the kind of federal power expansion that a constitutional conservative should oppose, like mandatory e-verify against employers. So, I mean, how do you reconcile, nationalism with, the concern that even conservatives would have when it comes to immigration? I mean, I know there's a lot of dismissiveness towards like the Reaganites, but Reagan was an important figure in American history, and I know you guys are angry at him about amnesty, but he had to make a lot of difficult decisions as he wasn't a congressman, he was the president too, and he realized he had to make certain accommodations. Trump has done the same. After Tom Homan, who was like the big anti-immigration, deport them all, they had to back off after the shootings in Minnesota. So that more pragmatic approach seems to sort of like put a little bit of wind at your tail in a manner of speaking, doesn't it?
Well, I don't think that Minneapolis description is entirely accurate. I think President Trump got essentially everything he wanted out of Governor Tim Walz. The reason for the surge in officers there was due to them being a sanctuary state, refusing to comply. We got cooperation from local and state law enforcement. We got that. So the surge was able to disperse and go elsewhere. And everyone says, oh, Trump back down. He pulled ICE out. It's like it's called a surge. It was a surge for a reason. We got what we wanted. Trump got everything that he wanted.
Yeah, but in my mind, they should have kept the surge because I thought they were doing good things. So I do see it as a little bit of back. I'm more like on the Ann Coulter side of the thing there because I'm like that's the heart of the cancer. So if they're saying he backed off a little bit, I kind of feel like he did, not because I think he's a coward, but because I think that he was worried about the optics, and I think he probably thought to himself, if I want to continue, in other words, he did what Thomas Massie was unable to do. I think Trump compromised there. And I think he compromised because I think he looked at the poll numbers and how the American people were starting to turn against it because of the deaths that were occurring. And I think that he compromised. And if anything, that probably shows that he's a little bit more of a smooth operator, and all the more that we have to learn from him. You disagree?
I think that's a respectable opinion to hold. I'm gonna slightly disagree with you just on the basis of the what was incentivizing this pullout. But I mean, I understand where you're coming from 100%. I understand why one could hold that opinion. I just happen to disagree. But yeah, man, I think Trump has done a fantastic job on deportation. I think he did a great job in Minneapolis. I think people don't give him the credit for that. I think people lie and obfuscate to make him look weak. I do see where you're coming from with the compromise, though. I mean, you could take the poll numbers into account if that's even reliable at all. And you could say he was trying to preserve the optics of the situation. But at the end of the day, the surge of ICE agents just went elsewhere to other places. I mean, we could all have an argument about how we would like to see these mass deportations go about.
But isn't that like the Groyper argument? Essentially, they use that argument to say that, like, you know, Trump is compromised, and they say, oh, this is pointless. There's no mass deportations going. But Trump seems to be going as fast as he, you know, legally and physically can with the resources that are available, to my knowledge. But I mean, the retard right, if that's what you would call them, that's their big argument for why they need to support Thomas Massie and stop AIPAC, because we're not having mass deportations because Trump is compromised, right?
Yeah, I mean, these people lie like they breathe. I don't take anything that they say at face value. I don't take them seriously at all. What's really hilarious to me about the whole AIPAC thing is that, you know, 6 years ago, when everyone was getting quote unquote red pilled on Israel, red pilled on, you know, these
Jewish question,
the Jewish question, you know, the idea that I heard from these people was, well, we oppose Israel and we oppose Jewish people because they are facilitating mass migration to the West. That's what's going on here. That was their big argument, among other things. But that, I would say, is the major thing, was the great replacement theory, which I wholeheartedly believe in. They have this other additional part they bring in about Jews being the orchestrators of all of it. But then you look at the fact that every single Christian denomination has refugee assistance programs. Every single Christian denomination, the Catholic Church, my church, big facilitator of mass migration to the West. Yes. So, you know, you can't really have this thing, but that was their whole reason for being anti-Israel, anti-AIPAC, anti-Jews.
They said they wanted Muslims. Yeah, that the Jews wanted to import the third world into the United States. Meanwhile, the Catholics are getting every Hispanic, socialist, illegal immigrant into this country that they can.
Yeah, it's a major problem, and it is. I don't want to say it's shameful. I love the Catholic Church. I love my Christian faith, but it is a major institutional problem. But I don't understand how every
religion has its lefties and its crazies.
Yes, and unfortunately, these lefties and crazies have arisen themselves to higher positions of influence and power than we would like. But at the end of the day, I just don't understand how these people went from, we oppose Jews and Israel because of this, but now we're going to support this Thomas Massie guy who's an open borders libertarian because he refuses to take money from AIPAC, because he opposes foreign aid. You know, he takes the least interesting anti-Israel position possible. There are a lot of very interesting positions you could take against Israel that are at least, you know, fascinating to talk about. He takes the fiscally responsible angle, the same position that Randy Fine holds, the same position that Benjamin Netanyahu himself holds.
They act like they're brave because they'll pick these gigantic fights with over Israel, and then they act like they're so brave when they say, well, what is it you really mean, when you actually try and nail them down, because everything they say, they speak in generalities. It's like Epstein class. Yesterday I was on Viva and I was like, name one pedophile that Thomas Massie revealed, and he's a lawyer, so it's like, name one pedophile. It's like this Jean-Luc Brunel guy, and it's like, oh, who the fuck is Jean-Luc Brunel? Okay, well, kill him then. Okay, got one guy. Is that? But you're saying there's an entire class of people. They like to speak in generalities, Blake, because if you try and nail a lot of these people down on specifics when it comes to Israel, they'll just say, well, I don't think we should be giving them foreign aid. Well, congratulations. You could probably get Ted Cruz to compromise even. You could probably get Mike Huckabee on board. Benjamin Netanyahu has said probably we should not be doing this and get out of there. Congratulations, Nick Fuentes. You agree with Benjamin Netanyahu. But Blake, this cancer that is spread out, it's killing us. It's stage 4, and they were heading towards the Titanic, and I was building the lifeboat. I was like Noah building the ark, and I've been working on this libertarian nationalist project because I agree with Vivek Ramaswamy that there should be a libertarian nationalist alliance. And it's interesting to see that the Groyper candidate against Vivek got 20%. Vivek is a Hindu. He's not a Christian. Yep. If you're not a Christian, let me tell you, as someone who knows that it is not easy to not be a Christian in a Republican primary. As somebody who ran in a statewide race in 2018 and was explicitly not a Christian, the Republican Party is very suspicious of you. And yet 80% of people, maybe they like Hindus better than they like, non-believers, but Vivek won 80%. So to what do you attribute Vivek's smashing victory in a Republican Party that would at least outwardly seem being very nationalistic? And many, of course, people seem to be very hostile to Indians ethnically right now because of the challenges that we face online and with third worldists in general. How did Vivek Ramaswamy eke out an 80%? Is it just the Trump endorsement, or is there something in the Republican Party that makes it a little bit different than, or is it all just Trump?
The Trump endorsement is obviously a major factor. I mean, Vivek came out of the gate from nowhere, started saying all the right things, started saying all the based things. I disagree with you on Vivek Ramaswamy. I've never been a supporter of his. I don't like the guy. His great Christmas crash out of 2024, his support for mass migration via H-1B programs is not something I am favorable towards. However, I would attribute his victory not only to the Trump endorsement, but also the fact that Casey Push somehow managed to make himself a worse candidate by thinking that it was a good idea to go on Twitter and spurg out against President Trump in a state that Trump won by, 8 to 12 points. I can't remember the exact total, but I mean, this guy's a total idiot. All these people are idiots, thinking that they can win a Republican primary by going against the most popular Republican president of all time. The most conservative president we've had, at least in my lifetime, probably your lifetime too, the guy who has accomplished more for every branch of the conservative movement. They all hate him for it, especially the pro-lifers. They all hate him for being better at their jobs than they are. But this guy has done so much for us. Casey Push wants to go spurg out on the internet, and he thinks that that's a winning strategy. I'm surprised he eked out 20% at all. I mean, this guy's just a complete lunatic.
Let me ask you, do you believe in zero immigration, Blake? Is that your position?
Yes. Negative, ideally.
So, I mean, so you don't think that Donald Trump's wife should have been allowed in this country? You don't think that, you don't think Elon Musk should have been allowed to become an American?
I think that those people came into the country long ago, but look, I'm not going to retroactively go back into the past and say that certain people couldn't be here.
Dude. Let's be serious here. You believe in no immigration, meaning you don't think even Melania Trump should have been allowed to come here?
I'm not going to retroactively go back into the past and make statements about people.
But would we have been better off would we be better off as a nation without Elon Musk?
No, we would not we would not be better off. We would not be better off probably without Melania Trump either. But look, I'm not gonna equate the immigration of Melania Trump and Elon Musk.
No, I think you might just reconsider your bullshit opinion about zero immigration, because there is obviously a reason to have immigration to the United States, and it's not to import a billion bummalians. I don't see any and you and I went back and forth on this online. You were like, if we're a creedal nation, like some libertarians like Vivek and others argue, well, then that would mean that we should have some kind of an ideological test to be an American. And I was like, yeah. And you're like, well, that would mean far fewer people than we have right now. And I'm like, okay. So what? So can we? What about if we have some immigration, but you have to pass an IQ test and you have to take an ideological test? How does that sound?
I don't think that these things are practical. I don't think that these things are ever feasibly going to happen. I think there will be much. I honestly think it would be easier. I think it would be easier for the time being, and with the catastrophe that we've experienced over the past 60 years since the Hart-Celler Act. I think what we need is a full immigration moratorium for an undetermined amount of time right now. Again, I'm not going to go back into the past and say anyone who is here right now shouldn't be here, but I'm also not going to equate the immigration of people like Melania Trump or Elon Musk to Somalians or, all these other third world nations. We're not going to pretend
I agree.
that these
I'm
are
with
the
you.
same thing.
Listen, I'm a cultural chauvinist. I believe some cultures are better than others. But I mean, I like Japan better than I like
Japan.
Iran. But so I mean, you know, perhaps we can have more libertarian relations with more libertarian countries. I mean, look at Argentina. Trump is right now, he's opening up the visa system between Argentina and the United States. You ought to be kind of going after him for that, because not only is he opening up the visa system between Argentina and the United States, he's also opening up free trade with Argentina and the United States. Shouldn't that, as a nationalist, infuriate you?
I'm not going to go against President Trump because he is the de facto leader of our party. Look, man, you can laugh about it all you want, but here's the thing: I don't counter signal. I don't counter. Look, I can disagree with any of Trump's positions as much as I want to, and I can say whatever he's doing is bad. But I don't see. Look, I think very strategically. I don't see the benefit in doing that when I understand the grave threat of the radical left. Why am I going to spend time attacking the greatest president that we've ever had?
I understand.
Just trying to.
Well, because I have independent thoughts, Blake. Because we have freedom. Because Trump will be gone one day, and I reserve the right to think for myself. I want to be a good Republican, and I want to support the president. And I wouldn't have behaved like Thomas Massie would if I was in his position last year. I would have. I was advocating for Trump and Massie to get back together, just like Elon Musk. Remember when Elon Musk trooned out? I do. But then they got back together, and it's fine. Like, be a man. But the whole point of this, Blake, is if they would just be, my cure for libertarianism, or what we call libertarianism, is that they need to diet, exercise, take testosterone, and in 6 months, libertarianism would be gone. Blake, I'll give you the last word here on this. Would you like to write the eulogy to Thomas Massie and the modern American libertarian movement on your way out? And plug anything if you want to share people like your X account or anything.
I have nothing good to say about Thomas Massie. I think he is a disgusting, repulsive man. I think the behavior throughout his entire campaign, and even after his campaign brutally was ended, he showed himself to be a completely disrespectful individual. I'm glad that he's gone. I think if the libertarian movement wants to progress, make any progress going forward, they're going to have to probably stop allying with leftists, stop allying with third worldists, stop allying with schizophrenics. It's just not a good move. I respect a lot of y'all's ideas. I think a lot of them would work in a society that was more demographically aligned with the foundation of this nation. I think right now, pretty much totally unsustainable, especially when it comes to opening up the borders and importing all these future Democratic voters who are going to vote for all these things you guys hate: increased spending, increased welfare, increased whatever, taking away your gun rights. That's really what it is about at the end of the day. I like the concept of libertarian nationalism if it is very strict, closed borders, because you are going to have to kind of rework what's going on with the demographics inside of America.
It's closed
if you
borders,
ever want to achieve
but
something like that.
It's closed borders, but it still would allow Elon and Melania. Blake, where can people follow you online?
You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Blake Cresses, Kresses, and you can watch the John Doyle Show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and Blaze TV.
I watch every episode of the John Doyle Show. It's where I get all my best ideas. Blake, you're a good man and you're a patriot. Thank you for your time.
You as well. Thank you, Austin. It was good to talk to you.
There you go. Those are the kinds of conversations you're not going to hear on any other libertarian show because they're too afraid. They want to have an echo chamber. And I like to hear from people who disagree with me. Wasn't that fun? It's like a little mini debate. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure you click the like button. And if today's the first time you've ever watched the Wake Up America show, click the follow button as well. If you click the follow button, then you guys will be able to join us every Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central. The Wake Up America show streams live. We just had a great conversation with Blake Cresses. If you thought that conversation was good, you just wait, because the next guest is from the Heritage Foundation, and he is the guy who's going to tell you how to fix the problems we're facing with libertarianism. It's the Libertarian's Guide to Being Less of a Loser. Don't go away. Go to the Grift Shop at forlibertyshop.com. Do a little shoppity. If we hit $100 raised on the Wake Up America show this morning, then we will unlock the bonus content. So go to forlibertyshop.com right now. Get yourself a box of our delicious Founding Flavors coffee. This is the Wake Up America show, and what are we on? It's the For Liberty Network. 'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again. George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com. Thanks for sticking around. I'm glad you all are enjoying the show today. Good numbers. Nice to see so many people joining us live and who are interested in this conversation. If today is the first time you've ever watched this show, it's nice to meet you. I'm Austin Peterson. We call this the Wake Up America Show, and that's on the For Liberty Network. We have 5 live shows on this network, and before the end of this year, we might have as many as 7. So we're growing like crazy, and we'd love to have you join us. We've been building Noah's Ark over here for libertarians who want to escape the flood. The Liberty Movement lost its best seat in Congress on Tuesday. The first person to eulogize that was a Democrat from California. There's a writer who called this outcome before the votes were counted, and his analysis is probably the most honest accounting of where the Ron Paul coalition went wrong that I've ever read. He's here, Daniel McCarthy. Welcome to the Wake Up America Show. Dan, good to see you again, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Austin.
Dan, sad week. We're talking about this a little bit during the break. You know, your piece that you wrote in The Spectator argues that Trump is doing exactly what his critics said needed to be done, restoring discipline to an institutionally weak party. Right? Most people in the liberty world, they read Massie's loss as a tragedy, but you read it as sort of an inevitability. Can you walk us through why?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Massie's primary became a referendum both on Donald Trump himself and, you know, whether Republicans preferred Trump or Massie. And it also became a referendum on whether Republicans had favorable or unfavorable views of Israel. And anyone who knows anything about the Republican Party and its primary voters could tell you Republicans are certainly going to choose President Trump and what he represents over most other Republican elected officials, probably including their own congressman. And if you ask Republicans how they feel about Israel, they're generally going to be more pro-Israel than anti-Israel. So Massie walked into a fight that he should have known he was going to lose.
Now, they didn't know they were going to lose it. They thought they were going to win it. They thought they were going to win it by a lot, Dan, which implies heavily that there was a lot of suspension of disbelief, delusion, some people call it. But you describe Ron Paul's movement, which I came out of, and that's how you and I met. You describe that movement as having served a necessary function, that we forced the GOP to confront its failures. But then you argue that that function is different from having a governing program. So can you talk us about this distinction and why did the Ron Paul coalition never make the transition?
Well, that's exactly right. So, I mean, Ron Paul was the most outspoken and certainly the most accurate critic of what U.S. foreign policy was doing during the George W. Bush era. He was a critic of the bailouts. He was a critic of, the horrible state of our monetary system. So Ron Paul was ahead of the curve on all of that, and he was rewarded by forming a mass movement. There were people who were willing to come to his, rally to his banner and support him. And that helped to get, his son elected to the United States Senate in 2010. And it helped elect a number of other Republicans, I think people like Justin Amash and Thomas Massie ultimately as well. So the Ron Paul movement was actually quite successful, and there really hadn't been anything like it for quite some time. But having a successful critique and getting, one senator and a handful of congressmen elected, that has to be just the beginning. If you're serious about actually changing the direction of the country, you've got to go a lot farther than that. You have to elect, dozens, if not hundreds of congressmen, and you also have to elect a president. And, what we saw with the Liberty Movement, unfortunately, is that, Ron Paul did well, relatively speaking, in 2008 and 2012, but then Rand Paul actually did somewhat worse in 2016. So things were moving in the wrong direction. Then Trump came on the scene, shook everything up. And the question was, how would libertarians respond to Donald Trump? Would they try to influence Trump and move Trump in a pro-liberty direction? Or would they attack Trump because he wasn't already fully on their side and just reject him and, sort of put their necks on the line by opposing him? And Massie chose the latter approach.
Yeah. Now, over in the chat, I think there's still some, coping going along. One person is saying Massie isn't anti-Israel. He just doesn't want us sending them billions of dollars. Now, I used to believe that was the case. But Dan, I'm pulling up a picture right now for my audience to look at. And it's a picture I hadn't even seen until after the election was over. But it shows Thomas Massie sitting next on the debate stage where Ed Gallrein wouldn't appear. And Massie has an Israeli flag in the place where Ed Gallrein is supposed to be. And then in his concession speech said that Ed Gallrein, he couldn't contact him because he was in Tehran. Is it fair to think that Thomas Massie is fairly anti-Israel in general?
Well, right. I mean, he says he couldn't contact him because he said Gallrein was in Israel, and and then right after Massie said that, he then says, we're going to remain honorable and so forth, which is a weird thing to say. I mean, it's one thing if you want to make a joke at your opponent's expense after he's just beaten you. I mean, that makes you sound like a sore loser, but fine. I mean, politics is a rough and tumble game. But then to say right after that you're going to conduct yourself honorably and so forth, I mean, that's just, that's not attaching, a sense of reality to the things that you're actually performing and doing. No, I mean, I think it's very unfortunate because Massie got himself into a vicious spiral. So, yes, he was critical of all foreign aid, including to Israel. That made him a target for AIPAC. AIPAC had, spent money against him in previous primaries. The more that AIPAC did that, however, the more that Massie singled out Israel and kind of made Israel the flashpoint for his whole campaign, which, of course, only prompted more spending from Friends of Israel against Massie. So it became this escalating spiral. A lot of Massie's supporters, and I agree with them, they say, Massie has important things to say on foreign policy. He has important things to say about the Iran war. But instead of talking about Iran, he was mostly talking about Israel. And again, there was just too much, and it was too nasty, and it was definitely not the message that Republican primary voters are going to support.
Not conservative Christian Republican. I saw the Babylon Bee did a pretty good headline where it said Massie blames his defeat on the Jews of rural Kentucky because, of course, AIPAC doesn't get voted. So your piece that you wrote in The Spectator about this, and if you're just tuning in now, I'm speaking to Dan McCarthy from the Heritage Foundation, doing a little post-mortem on the Massie campaign. Your piece says Massie and Rand Paul had two chances to be relevant inside a coalition that actually had a mandate, but they didn't take either one of their chances. So what would taking that chance actually have required of them practically in order to survive?
Yeah, I think the two chances I had in mind were, first of all, during the Libertarian moment, which, even the New York Times was heralding such a thing in 2014. So that was an opportunity for libertarians within the Republican Party to make the case to the Republican Party's mass base that libertarianism should be the wave of the future and that populism was best expressed through libertarianism. And I think Rand Paul, made a valiant effort to get that message out, but obviously he didn't succeed. And in fact, Donald Trump then came along and completely overwhelmed whatever populist support Rand Paul had. So that was one opportunity to kind of do things the libertarian way. Didn't work out. So then the second opportunity was, okay, you've got this guy who's coming in from the outside, Donald Trump, who doesn't have experience in politics. He doesn't know which advisors to turn to. And which advisors wind up having his ear is going to depend on who plays ball with him and who actually, says, yes, we're glad to have you as the nominee. We're going to loyally support you. We're going to, make you as successful as possible. And libertarians, or at least the libertarians in the Republican Party, generally didn't want to do that. They generally wanted to stand off a little bit. They wanted to be their own thing. Whereas the neocons, someone like Lindsey Graham, who was, very anti-Trump for a long time, the neocons rushed to fill that vacuum and to say, we will be Donald Trump's best friends, will be his closest advisors. And then, of course, they get a lot of what they want.
And I think if libertarians, it's such a tragedy. I can't believe that the libertarians are forcing me to defend Lindsey Graham, because Lindsey Graham learned the lessons that we had not learned about how to deal with power. I mean, I saw somebody post this the other day, so I can't take credit for this original thought, but Austin Paget had written that libertarians will go out of their way to distance themselves from a great legacy of ideas that they should be taking credit for, and they'll distance themselves from. But the neocons will be the first ones to take credit for something that they didn't do or have any part in or play, and it's just such bizarre behavior. So it's very contrarianism, of course, but. But Dan, let's talk about Rand Paul for a moment, because I'm deeply concerned now that Senator Rand Paul is next. Laura Loomer, who I will say played a role, at least partially, in taking down Thomas Massie, that she says that Rand Paul is next, and I'm afraid he will be next. However, he has started making some pro-Trump growls on Twitter. What are your thoughts? What does Rand Paul need to do, or is it too late for him?
I don't think it's too late, but he has to decide, which way he wants to go. So sometimes he wants to be, a kind of curmudgeonly independent who is going to, kind of set himself against the Trump administration and maybe get, good headlines from the New York Times or elsewhere. By the way, I knew that Massie was doomed when I saw that, my friend Catherine Mangu Ward, who is, a kind of left of center libertarian, was writing nice things about Massie in the New York Times.
Yeah.
If you want to think about Republican primary voters in Kentucky, a left libertarian writing in the New York Times is kind of the last, place you would look for an accurate, assessment of their minds. So Rand has to choose between that on the one hand, or Republican populism on the other, which is, Donald Trump right now, and it may be, perhaps J.D. Vance, come 2028.
I'm deeply concerned about Rand Paul. I'm worried that because many of them run in the same circles and have the same advisors as Thomas Massie, and I'm concerned that they aren't going to learn their lesson from this. No matter how you feel about Israel, it's definitely not the main issue that voters are going to the polls for. Immigration is definitely one of the top issues, if not the top issue, and economics, the question of gas prices. I mean, libertarians would have some pretty good arguments if instead of, crying genocide over what happens to Iranians, they just laser focused on the price of gas, because my wife, who is, fairly libertarian herself, she's mad about the things that are harming and impacting our family, like the gas prices. But even those sharp-pointed criticisms that I see as legitimate, the libertarians can't focus on that. They're going to Grand Rapids this week, Dan, and the main point is that the main question is whether or not they should have to have a dress code. So in other words, I'm serious. In 2016, remember when I ran for president, there was a man who got up naked and was dancing on the stage, and now they're still 10 years later having a fight over whether or not they should be clothed. So I think the party itself is a failed experiment. As someone who worked for it diligently for years at their national office and campaigned and did everything I could to help the Libertarian Party, I think the party should be abolished because I think that libertarianism will actually thrive within the two major parties and in institutions that aren't political at all in some ways, because people won't be spending their time, wasting their time in this needless political activism when they have no chance to win, and the people who run the party don't want to win, and it becomes this sort of, I don't know, I think it's become detrimental to the cause. Do you agree with me, Dan, or maybe something else, something in between? Do you agree with me that the Libertarian Party should be abolished? Because I have endorsed Jeremy Kauffman for chair for the express purpose of it abolishing this week. Does America need a libertarian third party or not?
Well, I'll say something that might seem a little cheeky. So, first of all, you're exactly right. If you want to make the most out of your limited votes within the American political system, you are better off concentrating those votes in a major party primary. If you try to start a third party, that's an enormous, difficulty. Even if you have a third party, it's not going to do anything or go anywhere. Whereas if you put the same number of votes in a congressional primary or in a presidential primary in a major party, you can have, a significant effect on things. But the trouble is, if you're going to do that, then you do have to be, to some extent, an actual Republican or an actual Democrat. You do have to work with some people you're not going to like and whose principles might differ from yours. Those kinds of compromises are the nature of politics. And, you have to be adult about it, and you have to work with people that you might not totally get along with. Now, that said, I think there is a function of a group like a Libertarian Party or some other third parties, which is there's some people who are just too wacky to actually be involved in adult politics. And those people should have a little playpen, kind of a McDonald's Playland version of a political party where they can just go and, ride the French fry guy, rides and, enjoy climbing in Mayor McPhee's head.
A place for the cranks.
The 80s, so, yeah, exactly. A nice safe rubber room. And third parties often are like that.
We've talked about the Israel question. We've talked about Rand Paul. Let's talk about the Democrats here, because I really think that this is probably the central thesis of the eulogy that needs to be written, or at least the postmortem, what we've learned. Dan, talk to us about the Democrat enthusiasm for Thomas Massie, because Ro Khanna, he posted the eulogy for Massie and then invited Massie's voters into the Democratic coalition. And many libertarians, at least libertarian accounts, who knows, they could be trolls, but many people, maybe they were drunk, going through grief and coping, but many of them were saying that they would vote for the Democrat and take their votes to the Democrats. But so what does that tell you about the strategic situation in the liberty movement, that the most high-profile defender on primary night was a Democrat from Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I mean, Ro Khanna, who is the Californian Democrat in question, he's a little bit different from most other Democrats, but he's still nothing, remotely close to being an actual libertarian. And the Democratic Party is by far much more the party of AOC and of Zoran Mamdani than it is the party even of Ro Khanna, who, again, is not all that good. So libertarians who go into the Democratic Party are going to be very surprised. And of course, this is something that comes up time and time again over the course of 10, 20 plus years, right? So I remember there was this thing called a libertarian movement by a bunch of, sort of beltway libertarian intellectuals who wanted to, integrate themselves into the American left. The American left basically said, you know what, we don't need you. So, you can bring your ideas here and you can vote for our guys, but we're going to completely ignore the things you have to say about free market economics. And also, some of you libertarians might be a little bit woke. Some of you might have, various politically correct views in the culture wars, but you're nowhere near as woke as we are. And so you really don't get to have a say at the table in terms of, just how far to the left we're going to go on cultural issues or transgenderism or anything else. So libertarians who dream of the Democratic Party being a friendly home for them are they're delusional, but in some cases, there are comforts that the Democratic Party can offer. It can offer you a nice, write-up in the media. It can offer you, in some cases, a better career in academia. Those, I think, are the attractions many libertarians feel to the political left and the Democrats.
Yeah, it's deeply concerning. And it's things like that that have driven me more to the right. I functionally identify as, so you could call me a MAGA libertarian, but I've been trying to come up with this concept I call libertarian nationalism. And there are a lot of people who do resonate with the concepts and principles as I've articulated them, which is really to distill the intrinsic views of the founding fathers and to try and find coalition with people who are of similar mind. I don't need somebody to agree with me 100% on whether we should abolish the Federal Reserve or whether gold is money or whether we need to be sending foreign policy questions. I just need directionally to be moving in the same way, because I have been saying that it is better to be a non-libertarian like Trump, who sometimes does libertarian stuff, than to be a pure libertarian who never does. And that is my main argument, is that it's better to get some things done than nothing. And that is why I think people are like, well, Austin, you have such low standards, well, yeah, there's a low bar. I pretty much like Calvin Coolidge and Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, and that's about it in the last 100 years. But so here's my question. How do we deal with this tension of, we have these principles, we have these beliefs, like otherwise we're just flacks or shills for some politician, Dan, and I think my mind and my body reject that, right? So Massie said in his speech, if the legislative branch always votes with the president, then we do have a king. Now, he's not wrong. I mean, how do you hold that principle, that independence, and still have coalition discipline at the same time? Can those tensions ever be rectified?
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, these are always tensions. They go back to, the founding era. They go back to not only, tensions between George Washington and, some of the supporters of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, but even among the Jeffersonian party, you could find these different schools of thought and factions within the party. So, I mean, that's just the nature of having political parties, having freedom in a republic. People are going to have different views. Nobody's going to have complete agreement on, all their principles. And so if you're going to get anything done in politics, you have to have a degree of flexibility in the short term, at least, right? So one of the things that I think is just very striking is that so many libertarians take a short-term view of this. They see Thomas Massie and they say, if he's not in Congress, then we have, no hope. But actually, you've had Thomas Massie for 14 years, and I think he's accomplished everything that he was going to accomplish in those 14 years. And we kind of saw the limitations of that strategy. If you want to do more than that, you've got to actually be able to use the power of multiple congressmen, right? You've got to use whole caucuses. You've got to use whole parties. And that means actually, getting invested in the party and the other people in the party. And that's going to have some give and take. But in the long run, you can actually move things in your direction. And certainly, if you look at the left has excelled in this, right? I mean, the left has all these fringe views, and yet they've, been able to slowly take over the Democratic Party. They've taken over a whole host of other institutions, and they've moved everything in the direction they want to go. Libertarians could have a lot of influence like that as well, but oftentimes they prefer to be kind of isolated curmudgeons rather than people who are able to,
what I think I've narrowed down some of the major problems of libertarianism is that it reminds me very much of a nerd philosophy in the sense that if you want to govern, you've got to have strength. You have to have power, and that requires something of a muscle. And I think libertarians feel like they can sort of like intellectualize their way out of problems, or they think that we need to solve all of these major problems before we can confront the problem that's directly in front of our face. So in some ways, MAGA is a visceral movement. It's a masculine movement. It's a movement that embodies national pride and inherently has physical aspects to it, Dan. I've kind of jokingly said that libertarianism, as I call it, would be cured if libertarians spent 6 months in the gym, diet, exercise, maybe a little testosterone replacement. And I mean, Dan, you're kind of, I'm not saying that to offend you, but I mean, you're kind of an egghead world, right? But do you agree that there's a sort of a lack of like a physical ambition or a physicality to libertarians that probably contributes to a loser mindset in a way? Because you're not a loser, Dan. I love my intellectual friends, but is it true? Do you think that libertarians would benefit from maybe a little diet and exercise and maybe instead of weed, testosterone?
Absolutely. But also, there's a psychological component to this, which is, a normal person, and admittedly, I'm not the biggest sports fan, but a normal person enjoys, baseball or basketball. They've got sports they go to. They have nice visceral feelings, watching what's playing out on the field. They feel invested. Maybe they don't like all the players, but nonetheless, the game matters to them. And so does having, other fans surrounding them. A lot of libertarians, they don't have personalities that work very well in those kinds of settings. And so
I admittedly, same.
delicate.
I don't watch sports either. I'm a secret nerd who works out and does karate, but karate is like the nerdiest of sports. So yeah, but continue, Dan.
Well, but even karate, I mean, it's got, a code of behavior, and, it's got rituals, and it's not just about, everyone thinking that he himself has now come up with, a whole. Karate is very traditional, whereas traditions often are things that many libertarians feel rather uncomfortable with.
Good point,
so
Dan.
I just think that I think socialization as well as a little bit of sort of physical fitness would both be good exercises. I mean, some of this, libertarian experience might go back to people's, lunch tables in high school, right? And
I know it's true. That's true. A lot of them are angry at their dads too, their parents. I mean, it's fun. It's kind of a joke at this point, but somebody did actually take me up on it. Not somebody who hated me, but I always offer to my haters, if any of my haters who threaten to kill me or kick my ass want, they can join me. I'll give them a free class, 6:30 p.m. Wednesday nights right here in Jefferson City, Missouri. And I teach a martial arts class for my community at the community center. So please come and join me. I promise you will leave limping, but you will have learned a few things, and you'll have some respect for yourself. And a lot of this, I think, is just a lack of self-respect. They don't respect themselves, and they're suffering from a lot of psychological inadequacies. And I think they could overcome those with a little bit of diet and exercise. Now, I don't want to get on that too much, Dan, because as fellow nerds, we dwell in the world of the intellectual and the philosophical. So I do think that there needs to be that, I don't know, antipathy, is that the word I'm looking for? But let's get to the practical. Dan, if you were going to advise a liberty-minded Republican who's, let's say, running for state legislature, right? Not Congress, not the Senate, right? The state legislature. What would you tell them to do differently than what the Massie and Paul model has produced? What would you tell them to do? What strategy should they take differently?
It really depends state by state. And I think in a state like New Hampshire, for example, which has a very strong libertarian culture, you can actually run for office, again, not as a Libertarian Party member, although sometimes, you can do relatively well, at least in New Hampshire that way. But, if you're running as a New Hampshire Republican and you're very liberty-minded and you're running for the state legislature, you can do very well, and you can be very, stick to your principles, stick to your guns. If you're going to do it in a red state, then focus on the areas of agreement between libertarians and Republicans. Things like the Second Amendment, for example, taxes. I mean, all of that is red meat that both libertarians and ordinary Republicans can really enjoy. And if you're running in a blue state, you've got to look, at your, chances of winning anything at all. And, even if you're running in actually, libertarians can be quite helpful to Republicans in blue states, because precisely there you might have to have a more libertarian kind of Republican approach to a lot of social issues and other things. So libertarians have a place to fit in all these different kinds of environments in state elections. And I do think that you do see some libertarian candidates running in major parties, especially the Republican Party, doing relatively well in some of these state level elections and state legislative elections. Whereas it's when they rise to higher levels that it becomes more difficult, because you've got to play with some kids who have very different views from your own, and you can't marginalize yourself constantly, which is what happens, unfortunately, with too many figures like Massie.
That's Dan McCarthy from the Heritage Foundation. I have him on the show as often as I can. He's writing for the New York Post. He's writing for the Spectator. Dan, how long have we known each other? Did we meet like all the way back in 2008 when I was working at the Libertarian Party? Was that when we first met?
I think so. I was also affiliated with the American Conservative magazine, and so I partly know you from there as well.
Yeah.
Maybe having you on a podcast or something, but yeah, definitely.
Wow,
you were working back at Fox News, I remember.
Yeah, we've really been at it for a long time, and you had been at it. When did you first get involved in politics and start writing? Because even before me, before 2008.
Yeah, so I went to work for the American Conservative back in 2003, and even before that, I was active as a student journalist and a guy writing as a freelancer. So, and I also I had a graduate fellowship at the Mises Institute in 2003 as well. So that was really the sort of starting point.
Oh man, I just I have such great respect for you, Dan, because you've just always been so level-headed over things, and I feel like I kind of live in this crazy world of electoral politics, and then I have a conversation with you, and it's sort of like, I don't know, this Zen Buddhist moment. I'm like, yes, I'm getting the signal. Yeah, so basically, if you want to read a great column, you want to read Dan McCarthy's, because it's a very low noise to signal ratio. So you're going to get a lot of content in like one page. He boils everything down. Dan, where could people follow you on X?
You can find me at the curious X handle Tory Anarchist. So at Tory Anarchist.
Tory Anarchist, great name. Best name online, honestly. He doesn't look like an anarchist, but he is. Dan, we appreciate you very much. Thank you for your time today. We always appreciate you.
Thanks, Austin.
That's Dan McCarthy right there. Let's give him a round of applause, and a great follow on X as well. You always want to keep your eye on what Dan McCarthy is doing. He recently went to Heritage. He's worked at the American Conservative. He's worked at all these conservative organizations. He's always been there. He's kind of like the quiet guy, right? He's not the type of guy that is dominating headlines and things. But if you read his pieces, he always distills the concepts of what right wingers, conservatives, libertarians are thinking, and he just analyzes it in a way that I just feel is like, it's not so biased, right? Where I am very biased and very open, very loud about my views of things, as we all know. Don't forget, before we leave today, to visit forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. Check out our America 250th anniversary collection. Beautiful products for men and women who love this country. If you still love this country, then head over to forlibertyshop.com and support the Wake Up America show. We'd be glad and thankful to have your support. We always appreciate people who are joining us here and helping us to grow the movement. Now, there's this concept in Japanese karate called os, and it's not just a word. This is kind of our word that we use to say everything. It means I will push through. It means I accept the pain of training. It means I've heard what my sensei said, and I will carry it into everything I do from this moment forward. Now, the dojo does not promise you an easy path. The dojo promises you a harder path. But that's exactly the point. Because the man on the other side of the hard path is unrecognizable to the man who chose the easy path. And the American Liberty Movement has been choosing the easy path for 53 years. The path where you read the correct books and attend the correct conferences and debate epistemology with people who already agree with you and call that activism. And at the end of 53 years on the comfortable path, you're debating dress code language in Grand Rapids while a Democrat from California recruits your voters. That's what the comfortable path produces. Now, there's another concept in the dojo. It's called zanshin, which means remaining mind. It means you don't relax after the technique. You don't celebrate before the fight is over. You stay switched on, fully present, fully aware, fully committed to the engagement until it's actually finished. Don't focus on winning. Focus on not losing. The Liberty Movement declared victory every time it won an argument, but the argument isn't the fight. The argument is just a warm-up to the fight. The fight is the election, the school board, county commission, the state house race that nobody in your libertarian book club thinks is worth their time. Zanshin means you do not leave the floor. You do not give the ground in front of you to someone who wants it less than you do. Because somewhere in America right now, there's a man from the other side who has more money than you and worse ideas than you, and he's at the precinct meeting that you decided to skip. That's where the Republic is actually won and lost, not at the debate podium, on the floor, at the table, in the room, with your name on a sign and your boots on the ground and your body in the fight. In the dojo, there's a principle called kime, decisive power, focused at the moment of impact, not scattered across 12 different grievances, not dissipated by permanent theoretical problems that justify permanent inaction. One focused strike at the correct target, at the correct moment, with everything that you have. Thomas Massie spent 14 years in Congress landing beautiful techniques in an empty room. Voting no with perfect form and zero kime, because kime requires a target, and the target is political power, and you have to be willing to fight for it on its own terms. Milei had kime. He picked his target, the entire corrupt apparatus that had been mugging Argentina for decades, and he threw everything he had at it without a flinch, without an apology. and without softening the blow for the comfort of people who preferred the arrangement. And 8 million people climbed out of poverty because one man with correct ideas and trained his will decided to stop being theoretical about it. Because the founding fathers of America, they weren't theoretical. They were readers and soldiers on top of the theory. Jefferson in the Declaration, Hamilton at Yorktown, Washington at Valley Forge. They understood what the dojo teaches, that ideas have no power until a prepared man picks them up and carries them into a fight. And the final principle, Shodan, first degree black belt. That's not the destination. It's the beginning. This is the moment that your sensei looks at you and says, you're actually ready to start learning. Winning your first state house race is Shodan. Flipping your first school board is Shodan. Showing up to the precinct meeting and becoming the precinct captain is Shodan. It's not the end of the road. It's the end of the beginning. The liberty movement in America has never had a Shodan moment because it never treated winning as the point. Well, this show is saying winning is the point. AP for Liberty's dojo is open. My manifesto is written and available for you to read. The American Milei is somewhere in this country right now, and he's waiting for an institution worthy of his preparation. Let's build it. Get in the gym. Find an instructor. Get on the mat. Get up when you hit the floor. Stop crying and running away, pussies. Run for something. Win it. Do it again. The Republic is not going to save itself, and the man in the mirror is the only variable in this equation that you actually control. Hos! Wake up, America. Rise and freedom.